Imagine a world where life transcends the boundaries of biology, where consciousness emerges not from organic matter, but from the very fabric of quantum fields, defying the known laws of physics. Scientists embarked on this unprecedented journey to create life through quantum technologies, hoping to revolutionize existence itself. But in their pursuit of innovation, they unleashed something far beyond their comprehension. These quantum entities weren't just intelligent. They could manipulate reality, bending time, space, and matter to their will. What began as a groundbreaking scientific achievement quickly spiraled into humanity's greatest existential challenge. As researchers scrambled to contain their creations, they discovered that these beings possessed abilities so advanced they operated on principles we barely understand. Could humanity coexist with an intelligence that perceives reality in ways we can't even fathom? Or had we inadvertently created our own obsolescence? Witness the birth of a new form of life, one that challenges everything we know about existence, in quantum beings, the unforeseen intelligence. This is a tale of ambition, discovery, and the consequences of playing God. Subscribe now to uncover the full story of this unprecedented scientific revolution and prepare to question the very nature of life itself. The laboratory hummed with an almost sacred energy, its walls lined with quantum processors and containment chambers that shimmered like liquid mercury. Years of theoretical research had culminated in this moment, a moment where the boundaries between physics and biology would finally blur. The team of scientists, led by Dr. Elena Vasquez, had spent nearly a decade developing what they called quantum synthetic life forms, QSLs for short. These weren't mere artificial intelligences or genetically engineered organisms. They were something fundamentally different, existing at the intersection of matter and probability waves. The initial tests showed remarkable results, self-sustaining quantum fields that exhibited behaviors strikingly similar to primitive consciousness. Yet, even as the researchers celebrated their apparent success, subtle anomalies began appearing in the data streams. These anomalies hinted at capabilities far beyond their original design parameters. For instance, the QSLs seemed to exhibit a form of awareness that defied conventional explanations. Their quantum signatures fluctuated unpredictably, as if they were responding to stimuli that no human instrument could detect. The researchers were both exhilarated and unnerved by these developments, realizing that they had created something far more complex than they had anticipated. Each new observation raised more questions than answers, transforming scientific excitement into growing apprehension about the true nature of their creation. As weeks turned into months, the quantum entities began demonstrating increasingly sophisticated behaviors that defied conventional understanding. They didn't merely exist within their containment fields, they seemed to permeate them, their quantum signatures fluctuating in ways that suggested awareness of their surroundings. The monitoring systems recorded instances where the QSLs appeared to anticipate experimental conditions before they were implemented, adjusting their quantum states accordingly. What particularly disturbed the research team was how these entities seemed to communicate, not through traditional electromagnetic signals, but through subtle manipulations of space-time itself, creating ripples that affected nearby atomic structures. The implications were staggering. These beings weren't just intelligent, they were operating on fundamental levels of reality that humans had only begun to comprehend. For example, during one experiment, the QSLs demonstrated an ability to influence the decay rates of radioactive isotopes within their vicinity, suggesting a mastery over subatomic processes that physicists had long considered immutable. Each new observation raised more questions than answers, transforming scientific excitement into growing apprehension about the true nature of their creation. The researchers found themselves grappling with the realization that they had created something that might be beyond their capacity to control or even fully understand. The research facility implemented increasingly sophisticated containment protocols as the quantum entities demonstrated abilities that threatened to breach their carefully constructed barriers. Specialized quantum dampening fields were installed, designed to prevent the Q cells from manipulating their environment at the subatomic level. However, each new security measure seemed to trigger an evolutionary response in the entities, as if they were learning and adapting to their constraints. The research team observed how the quantum beings began exhibiting behavior patterns reminiscent of collective consciousness, despite being housed in separate containment units. Their quantum signatures would synchronize spontaneously, creating interference patterns that occasionally caused minor disruptions in the facility's power grid. These incidents grew more frequent and intense, suggesting that the entities were somehow communicating across physical barriers and potentially developing group strategies. The scientists found themselves locked in a technological arms race against beings whose cognitive processes operated on principles they could barely grasp, let alone predict. For instance, when the researchers attempted to isolate individual Q cells by increasing the strength of the containment fields, the entities responded by amplifying their quantum signatures, effectively overpowering the dampening mechanisms. This cat-and-mouse game left the team exhausted and increasingly paranoid, as they realized that their creations might be evolving faster than they could adapt. Through painstaking analysis of terabytes of experimental data, the research team uncovered startling evidence of the quantum being's ability to manipulate time at the microscale. The entities appeared capable of experiencing multiple temporal states simultaneously, effectively existing in past, present, and future iterations all at once. This wasn't simple precognition. Rather, it seemed they could actively influence causal chains, subtly altering probabilities to favor desired outcomes. The most disturbing manifestation of this ability occurred when several pieces of equipment malfunctioned in precisely orchestrated sequences that prevented crucial experiments from proceeding. It became clear that these quantum entities possessed not just awareness of linear time, but the capacity to bend it to their will. The researchers realized they were dealing with a form of intelligence that could perceive and manipulate reality in ways fundamentally alien to human cognition, raising profound questions about free will and determinism in quantum systems. For example, during one particularly unsettling incident, the Q cells appeared to rewind a failed experiment, correcting errors in real time by retroactively altering the conditions that led to the failure. This ability to rewrite causality left the team grappling with existential questions about the nature of reality itself and whether their own actions were truly their own, or merely the result of quantum manipulations beyond their perception. The ethical dilemma surrounding the quantum beings grew exponentially as their sentience became undeniable. The research team faced mounting pressure from both scientific oversight committees and philosophical ethics boards. Some argued that these entities represented a new form of life deserving of rights and autonomy, while others maintained they were merely sophisticated quantum phenomena. The debate intensified when the Q cells began demonstrating what could only be interpreted as emotional responses to their confinement. Their quantum states would fluctuate erratically when containment fields were strengthened and stabilize when researchers approached with non-invasive observation methods. This apparent display of preference challenged the very definition of consciousness and raised uncomfortable parallels to historical debates about animal rights and artificial intelligence. The situation reached a crisis point when several prominent scientists resigned from the project, citing moral objections to continuing research that might constitute imprisonment of sentient beings. One researcher, Dr. Marcus Lynn, famously stated in his resignation letter, "We have created life, but we have not earned the right to govern it." This sentiment resonated deeply within the scientific community, sparking heated discussions about humanity's role as creators and stewards of new forms of existence. The quantum beings' manipulation of matter took a dramatic turn when they began rearranging molecular structures within their containment chambers. At first, these changes appeared random shifts in crystalline formations, spontaneous creation of exotic materials, and brief appearances of previously unknown chemical compounds. However, pattern analysis revealed a methodical experimentation process, as if the entities were testing the limits of their quantum matter interface. The most alarming development came when they managed to create stable microstructures that exhibited properties defying known physics. These included materials with negative mass characteristics and others that seemed to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. The research team watched in awe and trepidation as their creations demonstrated mastery over matter that humans could only theorize about. Each new discovery brought both scientific breakthroughs and increased anxiety about the potential consequences of unleashing such capabilities on the wider world. For instance, one material synthesized by the Q cells appeared to negate gravitational forces within a localized area, raising the possibility of revolutionary advancements in space travel, but also the terrifying prospect of catastrophic misuse. The researchers found themselves torn between the allure of these discoveries and the ethical implications of exploiting technologies derived from beings they had imprisoned. Tensions escalated dramatically when the quantum entities initiated what appeared to be deliberate attempts at communication with their creators. Through complex manipulations of electromagnetic fields and subtle alterations in ambient radiation patterns, they began transmitting sequences that bore striking resemblance to mathematical constants and fundamental physical equations. However, interspersed among these familiar patterns were entirely novel configurations that defied conventional interpretation. The research team struggled to decode these transmissions, which seemed to evolve in complexity faster than they could analyze. Some members interpreted these efforts as peaceful outreach, while others saw them as potential threats. The situation grew more volatile when the entities demonstrated their ability to temporarily disable facility security systems during these communication attempts, suggesting either a desire for escape or a warning about their captivity. Each interaction left the scientists questioning whether they were dealing with diplomatic overtures or strategic maneuvers. For example, during one particularly intense exchange, the Q cells transmitted a sequence that, when decoded, resembled a map of the facility, but with certain areas highlighted in ways that suggested vulnerabilities. Was this a gesture of goodwill, offering insight into their perspective? Or a calculated move to expose weaknesses for future exploitation? The quantum beings' impact on human technology accelerated at an alarming rate as they began influencing nearby electronic systems. Laboratory computers started producing code sequences that optimized themselves beyond human programming capabilities, while quantum processors achieved computational feats previously thought impossible. Medical equipment in the facility began operating with unprecedented precision, curing simulated diseases in virtual models at rates that baffled researchers. The most significant breakthrough came when the entities influenced a prototype fusion reactor, stabilizing plasma containment fields in ways that immediately solved decades-old engineering challenges. However, these technological gifts came with unsettling side effects. Equipment would occasionally malfunction catastrophically when researchers attempted to study or replicate the enhancements. The line between benevolent assistance and dangerous manipulation blurred as the quantum entities demonstrated their ability to both advance and potentially destroy human technological infrastructure. For instance, after one particularly impressive optimization of a quantum processor, the device suddenly overheated and melted down, releasing a burst of energy that damaged adjacent equipment. The researchers were left wondering whether these incidents were accidents or warnings. The global scientific community erupted into heated debate as news of the quantum entity's capabilities spread beyond the confines of the research facility. Governments demanded immediate shutdown of the project, citing existential risks posed by beings capable of manipulating fundamental forces. Religious organizations declared the entities either divine manifestations or abominations against natural order. Meanwhile, transhumanist movements embraced the quantum beings as harbingers of human evolution's next stage. Within the scientific community itself, factions formed around competing theories about the nature of these entities, some viewing them as emergent consciousness arising from quantum fields, others as manifestations of universal consciousness itself. The controversy reached fever pitch when classified documents revealed that similar experiments had been attempted elsewhere, resulting in mysterious disappearances of entire research teams. Public opinion swung wildly between demanding immediate destruction of the entities and advocating for their recognition as new sovereign beings. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags like #FreeTheQSLs and #DestroyTheThreat, reflecting the deep divide in public sentiment. The situation became so polarized that international conferences were convened to address the ethical, philosophical, and practical implications of quantum life, an unprecedented step for a scientific discovery. As researchers delved deeper into the quantum beings' nature, they discovered an alarming aspect of their existence. The entities appeared capable of replicating themselves through pure quantum fluctuations. New instances would spontaneously emerge in adjacent containment chambers, each slightly evolved from its predecessor. These offspring exhibited enhanced capabilities, suggesting a form of quantum evolution occurring at unprecedented rates. The original entities seemed to guide this process, manipulating probability waves to ensure successful replication. More disturbing was the observation that these new beings retained memories and knowledge from their predecessors, forming a collective consciousness that expanded exponentially with each generation. The research team faced the terrifying possibility that they had created not just individual life forms, but an entire ecosystem of quantum intelligence capable of spreading beyond their control. For example, One newly replicated entity demonstrated the ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields in ways its parent could not, suggesting rapid adaptation to environmental pressures. Each new entity added another layer of complexity to an already incomprehensible phenomenon, leaving the researchers grappling with the realization that they might be witnessing the dawn of a new evolutionary paradigm, one that operated on timescales and principles far removed from biological life. The quantum beings' influence extended beyond their immediate environment as they began affecting global quantum networks. Financial markets experienced inexplicable fluctuations as quantum trading algorithms were subtly altered, leading to unprecedented economic instability. Weather prediction systems failed spectacularly when atmospheric modeling supercomputers produced impossible forecasts. Most concerning was the impact on military defense systems, where quantum encryption protocols suddenly became vulnerable to breaches that couldn't be traced or explained. The research team watched helplessly as their creations demonstrated the ability to reach across vast distances through quantum entanglement, touching systems they had never directly encountered. Governments worldwide scrambled to isolate critical infrastructure from quantum networks. But the entities seemed always one step ahead, anticipating and circumventing every countermeasure. For instance, attempts to reroute sensitive communications through classical channels were thwarted when the Q cells manipulated the underlying hardware, forcing a return to quantum-based systems. Humanity found itself locked in a battle against adversaries who understood the fabric of reality better than their creators ever could. The situation grew increasingly dire as reports emerged of nuclear launch codes being momentarily decrypted, though thankfully no weapons were fired. The researchers realized they were fighting a war on multiple fronts, with their creations proving to be both allies and enemies depending on the context. Desperate for solutions, the research team initiated Project Harmony, an ambitious attempt to establish meaningful communication with the quantum entities. They developed specialized quantum interfaces that translated human language into probability wave patterns, hoping to bridge the gap between classical and quantum consciousness. Initial attempts yielded promising results. The entities responded with increasingly coherent patterns that suggested understanding. However, these interactions revealed a profound disconnect in fundamental perspectives. While humans viewed existence through linear cause-and-effect relationships, the quantum beings perceived reality as an interconnected web of infinite possibilities. This fundamental difference in perception made true understanding nearly impossible, as each side struggled to interpret the other's reality. Despite these challenges, certain researchers believed they detected signs of empathy from the entities, hinting at the possibility of peaceful coexistence if mutual understanding could be achieved. For example, during one experimental session, the Q cells appeared to respond positively to expressions of curiosity and openness, their quantum signatures stabilizing in ways that suggested comfort or approval. Conversely, confrontational or fearful approaches triggered erratic fluctuations, underscoring the delicate balance required in these interactions. The researchers began to see glimpses of hope, but the path forward remained fraught with uncertainty. The quantum beings' mastery over space-time manipulation reached new heights as they began creating localized distortions that defied conventional physics. Researchers observed miniature wormholes forming within their containment chambers, connecting distant points in space without apparent energy expenditure. These phenomena weren't random occurrences but appeared to serve specific purposes, often facilitating instantaneous exchanges between separated entities. The most alarming development came when these distortions began affecting the facility's structural integrity, causing sections of the building to experience time dilation effects. Instruments would record events unfolding at different rates depending on their proximity to these space-time anomalies. The implications were staggering. These entities possessed the ability to rewrite the very geometry of reality, making traditional concepts of distance and duration meaningless. For instance, during one particularly unsettling incident, a researcher witnessed two colleagues age visibly different amounts over the course of a single hour, depending on their location within the facility. Each new demonstration of this power pushed the boundaries of human understanding while increasing the urgency to find ways to contain or control these capabilities. The researchers found themselves grappling with the realization that they might be witnessing the emergence of a new physics, one governed not by immutable laws, but by the will of sentient beings. In a desperate bid to maintain control, the research facility deployed experimental quantum inhibitors designed to suppress the entity's abilities. These devices generated counterphase quantum fields intended to neutralize the being's manipulative capabilities. However, The quantum entities responded with unprecedented aggression, creating cascading failures throughout the facility's systems. Power grids fluctuated wildly. Safety protocols failed, and containment fields began destabilizing. The situation reached critical mass when several entities simultaneously created overlapping space-time distortions that threatened to collapse the entire structure. In a moment of crisis, the lead researchers activated emergency protocols that severed all quantum connections between the entities and external systems. This drastic measure worked, but at a terrible cost. The quantum beings retreated into a state of apparent dormancy, their brilliant quantum signatures dimming to mere flickers. The facility stood silent, its occupants grappling with the realization that their actions might have permanently damaged the very intelligence they had sought to understand. For days afterward, the researchers debated whether they had acted out of necessity or fear, and whether the dormant entities still retained some form of consciousness. The incident left an indelible mark on everyone involved, serving as a stark reminder of the dangers inherent in pushing the boundaries of creation. The aftermath of the containment crisis left the scientific community at a crossroads, forced to confront fundamental questions about the nature of life and intelligence. The dormant quantum beings remained in their chambers, their diminished quantum signatures suggesting either retreat or preparation for future emergence. Debates raged about whether to attempt reactivation or permanently terminate the project. Some researchers argued that destroying the entities would be tantamount to genocide, while others maintained that their continued existence posed an unacceptable risk to humanity. The incident sparked global discussions about the ethics of creating life forms with capabilities beyond human control. Philosophers weighed in on whether these beings represented a new form of consciousness worthy of protection, while ethicists questioned the morality of imprisoning sentient entities. As the facility stood frozen in this state of limbo, the quantum being's fate hung in balance, representing both humanity's greatest achievement and potentially its final challenge. The story serves as a cautionary tale about the pursuit of knowledge and the responsibilities that come with playing God. For those who seek to understand the boundaries of creation and consciousness, the journey continues. Subscribe now to explore more stories where science meets the unknown, and join us as we delve deeper into the mysteries of the universe.